Kang Hyun stared at the rejection notice on his screen. Again. The 5th time this year. He took a deep breath and looked around the small office he had been given at the far end of the Galactic Archaeological Society's main building. The room was barely bigger than a storage closet with just enough space for a desk, chair, and a small shelf for his personal items. The society had given him the worst office on purpose. They wanted him to know his place. Human intuition is not a recognized research methodology, the notice read. Your proposal lacks sufficient scientific basis for funding approval. Hyun closed his eyes for a moment. He was the only human in the entire Galactic Archaeological Society. The only one in a place filled with aliens who thought humans were too young and too simple to understand the universe's mysteries. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Tae-sung, an older Peloran with gentle, blue skin that had faded with age. Unlike most aliens at the society, Tae-sung had worked with humans before and didn't look down on them. Bad news again? Tae-sung asked, his 4 eyes blinking in a pattern that showed concern. They rejected my Gosung Moon proposal, Hyun said, turning off his screen. Said it was a waste of resources. Tae-sung made a whistling sound that meant he was thinking. The caves on Gosung have been scanned before, nothing showed up. But those were automated scans, Hyun said, sitting up straight. No one has actually gone into those caves. The scans might have missed something. Something that only human eyes could see? Tae-sung asked with a small smile. Maybe. Or maybe something that needs a human touch to find. Hyun pointed to the small rock on his shelf. A simple stone with faint markings that had led to his biggest discovery so far, though even that had been dismissed by most of the society. Tae-sung was about to respond when loud voices approached, in the hallway. The door was still open and soon 3 figures appeared. Director Tula stood in front, tall and elegant with her silver skin shimmering in the light. Behind her were Voros and Quell, her favorite researchers and the ones who laughed, the loudest at Hyun's ideas. Ah, our human colleague, Director Tula said, her voice smooth but cold. I see you've received our decision on your interesting proposal. Hyun stood up. He tried to look confident even though Tula was a full head taller than him. Director, I still believe there's something valuable in those caves. The predecessors might have... The predecessors, Voros cut in, his red eyes narrowing, were a civilization that built wonders across the galaxy. They would not hide anything of value in ordinary caves on an unremarkable moon, especially not something that would be missed by our advanced scanning technology, added Quell, waving one of her 4 hands dismissively. But be missed by... What was your proposal method? Oh yes, walking around and touching the walls. She laughed, a clicking sound that made Hyun's jaw tighten. Director Tula looked at Hyun like he was a child who had drawn on the walls. Humans have been space-capable for what? 3 centuries? The society has studied the predecessors for over 2,000 years. Perhaps in time your species will develop the necessary perspective. Hyun wanted to argue, but he knew it would only make things worse. He had learned that much in his 2 years at the society. The funding will go to Voros' study of the predecessor energy matrices on Kelper, Tula continued. A proper scientific endeavor with measurable outcomes. Voros smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Don't worry, human. When I publish my findings, I'll mention your enthusiasm for the field. The 3 aliens laughed again and moved on, leaving Hyun standing in his tiny office with Tae-sung. They enjoy that too much, Tae-sung said quietly after they were gone. Hyun sat back down, his shoulders heavy. Sometimes I wonder why I even stay here. Because you're stubborn, Tae-sung said, now entering the office fully and letting the door close. And because you believe in your work. Fat lot of good that does without funding. Tae-sung looked at the door to make sure it was closed, then leaned closer. What if you had some funding? Not official society money, but enough for a small trip. Hyun looked up, surprised. What do you mean? I have some research funds that I haven't allocated yet, Tae-sung said. And I happen to know that Research Shuttle K-12 is scheduled for maintenance next week, but isn't actually broken. It could be borrowed. You'd risk your position here for my crazy cave theory? Hyun asked, hardly believing what he was hearing. Tae Sung's skin rippled in what humans had learned was a Pelleran shrug. I'm old, Hyun. I've seen how the society works. They focus so much on technology and established methods that they miss things. In my 300 years of research, I've learned that sometimes the best discoveries come from unlikely places. He touched the rock on Hyun's shelf. And from unlikely people. Hyun felt hope rising in his chest. But why help me? Because 50 years ago a human helped me when no one else would, Tae-sung said softly. Dr. Kim from Earth. She believed in my theory about predecessor communication matrices when everyone else laughed. She was right to believe in me. And I think I'm right to believe in you. For the next few days, Hyun and Tae-sung met in secret. They gathered supplies, prepared equipment, and planned the unofficial expedition to Gosung Moon. Tae-sung provided basic scanning tools, emergency supplies, and enough food for 3 weeks. Remember, Tae-sung said as they loaded the last crate onto the small shuttle, the society will monitor any communications. You'll be on your own out there. I understand, Hyun said, checking his supplies one last time. 3 weeks, then I come back whether I found anything or not. And if anyone asks, I know nothing about this, Tae-sung added with a small smile. You stole the shuttle and supplies? Hyun nodded, then hesitated before boarding. What if they're right? What? If there's nothing there? Then you'll have had a nice vacation away from Director Tula, Tae-sung said. But I don't think they're right. There's something in those caves. Something they can't see, but you can. As Hyun prepared for launch in the pilot's seat, he saw Voros and Quell walking on an observation deck above the shuttle bay. They noticed the activity and stopped to watch. Voros pulled out his communication device, probably to report the unauthorized launch. Hyun didn't care. By the time anyone could stop him, he would be well on his way to Gosung Moon. He activated the engines and felt the shuttle come to life around him. Let's see what secrets you're hiding, he whispered as the shuttle lifted off the deck and moved toward the airlock. Behind him, the vast space station of the Galactic Archaeological Society grew smaller. Ahead lay Gosung Moon, its cratered surface hiding caves that no living person had entered for thousands of years. Caves that might hold secrets only a human could find. As the shuttle accelerated away from the station, Hyun couldn't help but smile. Whether he found anything or not, for the first time since joining the society, he was doing things his way, the human way. And somehow, that felt right. The small shuttle shook as it entered Gosung Moon's thin atmosphere. Through the viewport, Hyun watched the barren landscape grow closer, a world of gray rocks, deep shadows, and endless craters. High above, the massive gas giant the moon orbited filled half the sky with swirling bands of orange and red. Beginning landing sequence, Hyun said to himself, a habit from his training days. No one was listening now. He was alone, exactly as the society expected humans to be. Isolated and insignificant. The shuttle's computer had identified a flat area near the largest cave system as the ideal landing spot. As the craft settled onto the rocky surface, dust billowed around it, then slowly settled in the low gravity. Hyun checked the external readings. The atmosphere was too thin to breathe, temperature far below freezing, and radiation levels higher than comfortable but not immediately dangerous. Pretty much what he had expected. Home sweet home for the next 3 weeks, he muttered as he put on his environment suit. The suit was bulky, but flexible enough for exploring caves. Its air supply would last 8 hours before needing recharging at the shuttle. After setting up the shuttle's security systems, Hyun stepped onto the surface of Gosung Moon. His boots crunched on the rocky ground. Each step sent up a small cloud of dust that settled slowly in the weak gravity. He looked around at the stark landscape. Sharp ridges of black rock cut across the horizon. Deep crevices split the ground. In the distance, at the base of a tall cliff, was the main entrance to the cave system, a dark hole like an open mouth. Nothing special to see, Hyun said, imagining Director Tula's voice in his head. Just rocks and more rocks. But Hyun felt something different. A feeling that humans called intuition and aliens called unreliable. Something was here. He could sense it. First, he needed to set up base camp. He unloaded the equipment from the shuttle: portable sensors, light sources, mapping tools, and sample containers. Everything a proper archaeologist needed, even a human one. By the time he finished setting up, the gas giant had moved across the sky. Night was coming. Hyun decided to wait until the next day cycle to enter the caves. He needed rest after the long journey. Inside the shuttle, as he ate a simple meal of processed protein cubes, Hyun reviewed what little information existed about Gosung Moon. The predecessors had been here, that much was certain. A few surface structures had been found decades ago, but they were simple outposts, nothing special. The Society had declared the moon fully explored after automated probes scanned the cave systems and found no energy signatures or refined metals that would indicate predecessor technology. But what if they weren't looking for the right things? Hyun wondered aloud. The predecessors had vanished 50,000 years ago, leaving remains of their civilization scattered across hundreds of worlds. They had been masters of energy, space travel, and matter manipulation. Most Society researchers focused on their technology, trying to understand how it worked. But Hyun was different. He cared about who the predecessors were, not just what they built. What did they believe? What did they value? These were questions his alien colleagues rarely asked. The next morning, though on airless Gosung, morning was just a time when the gas giant reflected more light. Hyun stood at the cave entrance. The mapping data from previous probes showed a complex network of tunnels reaching deep into the moon. Many were too narrow for the probes to explore fully. Perfect for a human, though. Hyun activated his suit lights and stepped into the darkness. The cave floor sloped gently downward. The walls were smooth in some places, rough in others, as if shaped by both natural forces and deliberate hands. He walked slowly, scanning with his equipment but also simply looking, touching, sensing. His alien colleagues would have relied entirely on their instruments, but Hyun trusted his human senses too. Hours passed as Hyun explored the main tunnels. He found nothing unusual, just stone, dust, and silence. But he refused to feel discouraged. This was only the first day. On the second day, he explored a different section of caves. Again, nothing significant appeared. The third and fourth days brought similar results. On the fifth day, Hyun decided to try something different. Instead of following the main tunnels mapped by the probes, he squeezed into a narrow passage that the machines had marked as too restricted for full exploration. The passage was so tight that Hyun had to remove his sample containers and some equipment to fit through. He pushed forward on his stomach, pulling himself along with his hands. The suit scraped against the stone walls. If he got stuck here, no one would come to help him. After 30 meters of difficult crawling, the passage widened enough for Hyun to stand. His suit lights revealed a small chamber with 3 more passages leading from it. Which way? He asked himself, studying the options. His scanner showed all 3 passages eventually connected to known parts of the cave system. There was nothing special here according to the instruments. But as he turned to leave, a slight movement of air caught his attention. One of the passages had a faint breeze, unusual in a sealed cave system. Hyun chose that passage. It narrowed again but remained wide enough to walk hunched over. After about 100 meters, he found something on the wall. A faint line carved into the stone. It could have been a natural crack, but it seemed too straight, too deliberate. He traced it with his gloved finger and found more lines connected to it. A pattern. No, a symbol. Hyun's heart beat faster. This was what he had been looking for, a sign of intelligent creation. He took out a small tool and carefully removed the dust from the wall, revealing more of the pattern. It wasn't like any predecessor writing he had seen before. The Society had cataloged thousands of predecessor symbols, but this was different, more flowing, more artistic. Hyun followed the passage, finding more symbols every few meters. They were like breadcrumbs leading him deeper into the cave system, away from the routes the probes had mapped. The passage began to slope steeply downward. According to his position tracker, he was now over 200 meters below the surface. The symbols grew more frequent and more complex. Then the passage ended abruptly at a solid wall of dark stone. "No," Hyun said, disappointment crushing him. "There has to be more." He examined the wall carefully. The symbols seemed to point at it like arrows directing attention. He pressed his hands against the stone, feeling its cool surface through his gloves. Nothing happened. Frustrated, Hyun removed his right glove. It was against safety protocols, but he needed to feel the stone directly. The cold bit into his skin as he placed his palm flat against the wall. For a moment, nothing changed. Then he felt it. A slight vibration. The wall wasn't vibrating. It was his hand. Something was responding to his touch, to his human touch. The stone beneath his hand began to glow with a soft blue light. The light spread outward in ripples, following the lines of symbols Hyun hadn't even noticed were there. The entire wall was covered with them, invisible until activated. Then silently, the wall simply vanished, not sliding away or crumbling, but disappearing as if it had never been there. Beyond was darkness. Hyun put his glove back on, took a deep breath and stepped through. His suit lights revealed a short tunnel that opened into a vast space. His lights couldn't reach the far walls or ceiling. It was an enormous cavern, far larger than anything the probes had detected. "How did they miss this?" he whispered. Then he realized. The wall had been solid to the probe's sensors. Only direct. Human touch had revealed what lay beyond. As he stepped further into the cavern, something happened. The darkness around him began to change. Points of light appeared on the walls, floor, and ceiling, tiny glimmers like stars. Hyun stood still, watching in wonder as more lights awakened. They were embedded in the stone itself, forming patterns that reminded him of constellations. In the center of the cavern, about 20 meters away, stood something that definitely wasn't natural, a tall structure made of what looked like crystal, reaching up at least 5 meters from the floor. Even from this distance, Hyun could see intricate designs covering its surface. It was beautiful, and it was unmistakably created by intelligent beings, by the predecessors. Hyun laughed out loud, the sound echoing in his suit. "Who's unreliable now?" he said, thinking of Director Tula and her dismissive words. He took a step toward the crystal structure, eager to examine what no society member had ever seen. The cavern seemed to respond to his movement. The lights grew brighter, and a soft hum filled the air. The forgotten beauty of an ancient civilization was awakening after thousands of years of silence, and a human, not an alien, not a machine, but a human, had found it. Hyun walked slowly toward the crystal structure in the center of the vast cavern. Each step made the lights around him pulse gently, as if the cave itself was breathing. The air in the cavern was different too. His suit sensors showed it was warming up, and the oxygen levels were rising. "Impossible," Hyun whispered. The cave system was somehow responding to his presence. As he got closer to the crystal structure, he could see it better. It wasn't a single piece, but thousands of thin crystal rods growing from a round base. Each rod ended at a different height, creating a shape like a frozen fountain. The crystal was clear but had rainbow colors moving inside it, flowing like water. When Hyun was 5 meters away, the crystal suddenly flashed with bright light. He stopped, raising his arm to shield his eyes. When he lowered it, the dark cavern had transformed. Above him, the ceiling now looked like the night sky, filled with stars. But they weren't random stars. They formed patterns, maps. Hyun recognized some constellations, but many were unfamiliar. Between the stars, lines of light connected different points, creating a three-dimensional map of what? Space routes? Energy flows? Around him, the walls of the cavern now showed moving images. They were scenes of landscapes, mountains, oceans, forests, deserts, but not from Earth or any world Hyun knew. The colors were slightly wrong. The plants strange, the water a deeper blue than Earth's. Predecessor worlds, Hyun said in awe. He was seeing places that had not existed for 50,000 years. He turned back to the crystal structure. It was glowing brightly now, and Hyun noticed something he had missed before. At its base was a flat area with a handprint carved into the stone, a handprint that looked very much like a human hand. Carefully, Hyun removed his right glove again. He knelt down and placed his hand into the carved print. It fit perfectly. The moment his skin touched the stone, the crystal structure's light changed from white to gold. The humming sound grew louder, more musical. And then, to Hyun's amazement, a voice spoke. It wasn't a real voice. The sound was coming through his suit's communication system. Somehow the crystal was sending signals that his equipment translated into words. "Welcome, kindred mind," said the voice. It was neither male nor female, but gentle and clear. "You have found our gift." Who are you?" Hyun asked, heart racing. "We are those you call the predecessors," the voice answered. "This installation was created to await one whose mind resonates with ours." Hyun couldn't believe what he was hearing. The predecessors had left a message, a recording that had waited 50,000 years for someone to find it. "Why me?" he asked. "Why did it respond to me and not to the probes that came before?" "This place was not made for machines," the voice said. "It was made for those who feel as we felt, who see beauty as we saw it." The crystal structure changed again. Inside it, Hyun could now see images forming. They showed tall, slender beings with 4 arms, predecessors as they had been in life. The images changed, showing these beings evolving, changing over time. To Hyun's shock, the later images showed beings that looked more like humans. 2 arms, similar faces, similar body shapes. "You look like us?" Hyun asked. "We were as you are, long ago," the voice explained. "Our bodies changed as our civilization grew. We altered ourselves, believing we were improving. But in our changes, we lost something precious." The images in the crystal changed again, showing brain patterns, neural connections. Hyun wasn't a biologist, but he could see the similarities between the patterns labeled as early predecessor and those labeled human. "What did you lose?" Hyun asked, though he was beginning to understand. "We lost our connection to beauty," the voice said. "We lost the ability to feel wonder, to appreciate things that had no practical purpose. We became too logical, too focused on efficiency. Our art disappeared, our music fell silent. We built great works of technology, but they had no soul." Hyun thought of his alien colleagues at the society, brilliant but cold, focused only on facts and function. "Like the current galactic species," he said. "Yes," the voice confirmed. "The races that now explore the stars are following our path. They value only what can be measured, what has clear purpose. They cannot see what we have left for them here." "But why create all this?" Hyun gestured at the cavern with its star, maps and images of lost worlds. "Because we foresaw that others would come after us. Others like us in our beginning, not our end. Beings who could feel, who could see the beauty in the universe and not just its functions. We created this place, for them, for you." The crystal structure changed again. A section of it became transparent, revealing a chamber inside. In the chamber was another crystal, smaller but more densely packed with rainbow colors. "This is our greatest treasure," the voice said. "Not a weapon or a power source or a technological secret. It is something more valuable." The small crystal rose from its chamber and floated in the air before Hyun. It was about the size of his palm, shaped like a perfect diamond. "What is it?" Hyun asked, reaching out but not touching it. "It is memory, experience. It contains the collected emotions of our people before we lost them. Joy, wonder, love, hope. The feeling of seeing a sunrise. The emotion of hearing music that moves the soul. The connection between beings who care for each other. All the things we gave up in our quest for perfect logic." Hyun was stunned. The predecessors, the most advanced civilization known to the galaxy, had left behind not their technology but their emotions, their ability to appreciate beauty. "Why give this to me?" "To humans?" Because you still have what we lost, the voice said. Your minds work as ours once did. You value efficiency, yes, but you also value beauty. You create art that serves no purpose except to exist. You make music that exists only to be heard. You tell stories that exist only to be experienced. The small crystal moved closer to Hyun. You may take this with you, the voice said. Share it with others if you wish. But know that there are more gifts hidden throughout the galaxy. Places like this one, waiting for those who can truly see them. Hyun carefully took the floating crystal. As his fingers closed around it, he felt a wave of emotions that were not his own. Joy so intense it brought tears to his eyes. Wonder that made his breath catch. Love that made his heart feel too big for his chest. Then the feelings faded, leaving only the small crystal in his hand and the memory of what he had felt. There is one more thing to show you, the voice said. The far wall of the cavern began to glow brighter than the rest. As Hyun watched, a door appeared in the stone, opening to reveal another chamber beyond. This chamber contains seeds, the voice explained. Plant species from 100 worlds, preserved in stasis. Worlds that no longer exist as they were. The current galactic species would see no value in them, plants with no medicinal properties, no practical uses. They simply exist to be beautiful. Hyun walked to the doorway and looked inside. The chamber was filled with thousands of small containers, each holding seeds or spores or pods from extinct species. We entrust them to you and your kind, the voice said, because you will value them for what they are, not what they can do. Hyun stood there, overwhelmed by what he had discovered. Not powerful technology or weapons that would impress Director Tula or Voros. Not practical knowledge that would change galactic travel or energy production. Instead, he had found beauty, memory, life. Things that the logical, practical aliens of the society would see as worthless. But Hyun knew better. This was the most valuable discovery possible, the heart and soul of an ancient civilization, preserved for those who could appreciate it, for humans. As the crystal in his hand pulsed gently with rainbow light, Hyun began carefully documenting everything he saw. He would need proof when he returned to the society, proof that the human way of seeing the universe wasn't primitive or unreliable. It was precisely what the predecessors had valued most. The journey back to Seojin Station felt longer than the trip to Gosung Moon. Hyun spent most of it organizing his evidence. He had taken hundreds of images and videos of the crystal structure and the hidden chamber. He had recorded the voice of the predecessor message. And most importantly, he carried the small rainbow crystal, proof that everything he had seen was real. As the shuttle approached the massive space station, Hyun's excitement mixed with worry. Would they believe him? Or would they mock his discovery as they had mocked all his ideas before? The docking bay was unusually crowded when he arrived. Word of his unauthorized expedition had spread. Hyun spotted at least 20 society members waiting as his shuttle locked into place. Among them were Director Tula, Voros, and Quell, standing at the front with their arms crossed. Taking a deep breath, Hyun gathered his evidence and the crystal, carefully stored in a protective case. Then he opened the shuttle door and stepped out. Researcher Kang, Director Tula said coldly. You have violated at least 7 society protocols. Unauthorized use of equipment, unapproved expedition, solo exploration of a potentially dangerous site. Hyun nodded. Yes, Director. I accept whatever punishment you decide. But first I need to show you what I found. Voros made a dismissive sound. Let me guess. More rocks? A few of the gathered aliens laughed. I request a formal presentation, Hyun said, looking directly at Tula, with all senior researchers present. And why should we grant that request? Tula asked, her silver skin reflecting the harsh lights of the docking bay. From the back of the crowd, a familiar voice spoke up. Because it is his right as a society member, regardless of species. The crowd parted to reveal Tae-sung. The old Peleran looked tired but determined. I sponsor his request, Tae-sung continued. And I take full responsibility for the equipment he borrowed. Director Tula's eyes narrowed, but she knew the rules as well as anyone. Very well. Main conference room. 1 hour. As the crowd dispersed, Tae-sung approached Hyun. Did you find anything? He whispered. Hyun patted the case containing the crystal. Everything, he said with a smile, and more than they could ever imagine. 1 hour later, the conference room was full. Every senior researcher had come, along with many juniors. They weren't there to learn, Hyun knew. They were there to watch the human fail. Director Tula called the room to order. Researcher Kang will now present his findings from his unauthorized expedition to Gosung Moon. You have 30 minutes, human. Hyun connected his datapad to the room's display system. I will begin with the cave system as mapped by previous probes, he said, showing the familiar diagram. As you can see, the automated scans showed nothing unusual. As we told you, Quell said loudly. Hyun ignored her. However, there were several passages too narrow for probes to explore fully. I followed one such passage and found this. He displayed an image of the first symbol he had discovered carved into the stone. A scratch in a rock, Voros commented. Fascinating. Not a scratch, Hyun said calmly. A directional indicator. It's unlike standard predecessor writing because it wasn't meant to convey information. It was meant to guide. He showed more images of the symbols leading deeper into the cave. Guide to what? Asked another researcher, a tall insectoid named Krell. Hyun switched to the video he had recorded when the wall disappeared. Several researchers leaned forward with new interest as they saw the stone glowing blue before vanishing. What technology caused that effect? Krell asked. Not technology as you understand it, Hyun said. The wall responded to direct human touch. The probes couldn't detect it because it was designed not to be found by machines. Director Tula waved a dismissive hand. A simple biometric lock, hardly worth the journey. It's what was beyond the wall that matters, Hyun said. He played the video of the massive cavern with its star ceiling and the crystal structure at its center. The room grew quieter. Even the skeptical researchers couldn't deny that the crystal structure was predecessor-made. Its design was too perfect, too complex to be natural. What function does it serve? Voros asked. Is it a power source? A computer? It's art, Hyun said simply. The room erupted in laughter. Art? Quell repeated, her clicking laugh louder than the others. The predecessors were masters of technology. They didn't waste resources on useless decorations. That's where you're wrong, Hyun said. He played the recording of the predecessor voice explaining their history, their evolution, and their loss of emotional capacity. When the recording ended, the room was silent for several moments. A clever fabrication, Director Tula finally said. You could have created that recording yourself. Hyun had expected this. I have physical proof, he said. He opened the protective case and carefully removed the rainbow crystal. It glowed, softly in his hand, catching the light in ways that made several researchers blink in surprise. May I examine that? Krell asked, extending a clawed hand. Hyun passed him the crystal. The moment it left Hyun's hand, the rainbow colors faded. The crystal became clear, ordinary. Krell turned it over, scanning it with a small device. Interesting material, similar to other predecessor artifacts but with unusual properties. However, I detect no energy source, no information storage capacity. He passed the crystal to Director Tula, who studied it briefly before handing it back to Hyun with obvious disinterest. As soon as the crystal touched Hyun's hand, the rainbow colors returned, swirling inside the clear material. It responds to you, Tae-sung said, his 4 eyes wide with wonder. Yes, Hyun said, because human brain patterns match early predecessor patterns. The crystal contains stored emotional experiences that can only be accessed by minds capable of similar emotional responses. Director Tula stood up. This is absurd. You expect us to believe the predecessors created a, what? An emotional storage device? For what purpose? To preserve what they had lost, Hyun said. their capacity for appreciating beauty without practical purpose. And they apparently decided humans were the only ones worthy of this gift? Foros asked sarcastically. Not the only ones, Hyun corrected. Just the ones most similar to their original state, before they evolved to focus only on logic and efficiency. Hyun could see he was losing them. The senior researchers were already dismissing his discovery as insignificant or fake. But then he noticed something unexpected. Some of the younger aliens were watching with genuine interest, particularly a group of Caldarians who were known for their musical abilities. One of the few alien species that created art for its own sake. There's more, Hyun said. He showed them videos of the seed chamber. The predecessors preserved thousands of plant species from worlds that no longer exist. Not for medicine or food, but because they were beautiful. Plants with no practical use? Quell scoffed. Why would anyone care about those? A young Seldarian researcher named Rill spoke up. Because beauty itself has value, she said quietly. Even if it serves no other purpose. Director Tula checked the time. Your 30 minutes are nearly up, Researcher Kang. What exactly are you proposing? I request a full expedition team to return to Gosung, Hyun said. To properly document the site and recover the seed samples for study. Tula looked around the room. Hyun could see her calculating the political situation. Many of the senior researchers clearly thought the discovery was worthless, but some of the younger ones were intrigued, and the evidence of a previously undiscovered predecessor site, regardless of its purpose, couldn't be completely ignored. Very well, she said finally. A small team will return to verify your findings. I will lead it personally. Hyun felt a surge of triumph that quickly faded as Tula continued. However, as you violated protocols, you will not be part of the team, she added with a cold smile. You will provide coordinates and details to my team, but you will remain here. That's not fair, Hyun protested. It's my discovery. It's a society discovery, Tula corrected. Made using society equipment, however inappropriately obtained. The decision is final. As the meeting broke up, Hyun stood alone with the rainbow crystal in his hand. He had found something incredible, something that proved humans had a special connection to the predecessors. And now Tula was going to take it away from him. Taesung approached, along with the young Seldarian Rill. She can't do this, Hyun said bitterly. She can, Taesung replied. But she may not succeed. What do you mean? Rill, her delicate features serious, spoke softly. The crystal responded only to you. The wall opened only for you. What makes Director Tula think the site will reveal anything to her? Hyun looked at the rainbow crystal, still glowing in his hand. Of course. The predecessor site had been waiting for a mind that could appreciate beauty for its own sake. Director Tula and her team might find the cavern, but would they be able to activate anything inside it? Despite his situation, Hyun smiled. Sometimes being underestimated had its advantages. 2 weeks passed. Director Tula left with her team of 20 researchers, the best equipment, and 3 large shuttles. Hyun was forced to stay behind on Seojin Station, limited to his tiny office and basic station privileges. Each day he checked for updates from the expedition. Each day there was nothing meaningful to report. They can't get in, can they? Taesung asked on the 15th day, visiting Hyun's office with a cup of warm tea. Hyun shook his head. They found the cavern entrance because I gave them exact coordinates. But according to these brief reports, they haven't been able to activate anything inside. He couldn't help smiling a little. The crystal structure remains dark. The star maps won't appear. The seed chamber door won't open. And the rainbow crystal? Taesung asked, looking at the small object on Hyun's desk. It glowed softly, colors moving inside it like living things. I kept it, Hyun said. Tula didn't think it was important enough to take. Just a pretty rock. To her. The communication panel on his desk beeped. To Hyun's surprise, it showed an incoming call from Director Tula herself. He answered it. Tula's silver face appeared on the screen. She looked tired and angry. Researcher Kang, she said without greeting. Your presence is required on Gosung Moon. Hyun blinked in surprise. I thought I was banned from the expedition. Circumstances have changed, Tula said stiffly. A shuttle will be sent for you. Be ready in 1 hour. The screen went dark before Hyun could reply. Taesung's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of amusement among Pelorans. It seems they need the human touch after all. 6 hours later, Hyun stepped off the shuttle onto the surface of Gosung Moon for the second time. The expedition base camp was much larger than his simple setup had been. 3 shuttles were parked in a row. Equipment and temporary buildings covered the area near the cave entrance. Voros was waiting for him. The red-eyed alien didn't look happy. Follow me, he said shortly. The director is waiting. They entered the cave, passing several research teams taking samples and readings from the walls. None of them would meet Hyun's eyes. Deep in the cave, beyond the narrow passage Hyun had first crawled through, was Director Tula. She stood before the wall that had opened for Hyun, the wall that was now solid stone again. Researcher Kang, she said when she saw him. Her voice was cold, but there was something else in it now. Desperation. Director, Hyun replied calmly. Having trouble? Tula's silver skin darkened slightly, the equivalent of an angry blush for her species. We have been unable to access the chamber you described. We've tried every scanning frequency, every known predecessor activation pattern. Nothing works. Did you try touching it? Hyun asked innocently. Of course we did, Voros snapped. We're not idiots. But it didn't work for you, Hyun said. It wasn't a question. No, Tula admitted. We need you to open it. Hyun looked around. At least 10 researchers were watching him. Some looked annoyed, others curious. And then what? Will you send me back again? If you assist us, you will be given full credit as the discoverer of this site, Tula said carefully. And you will be allowed to remain with the expedition. It was as close to an apology as he was likely to get. Hyun nodded and stepped toward the wall. Just as before, he removed his right glove and placed his bare hand against the cold stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blue glow began to spread from beneath his palm, following the hidden symbols across the wall's surface. The stone vanished, revealing the passage to the great cavern. A murmur of surprise ran through the watching researchers. Hyun led them into the passage and into the vast space beyond. The cavern was dark when they entered, but as Hyun walked forward, the lights in the walls began to awaken, just as they had before. The star patterns appeared on the ceiling, and in the center the crystal structure began to glow. Remarkable, whispered a researcher behind him. It's responding to his presence. It's responding to his brain patterns, corrected another. Just as he claimed. Hyun approached the crystal structure. When he reached the base with its handprint, he turned to Director Tula. Would you like to try? He asked, gesturing to the carved impression. Tula hesitated, then stepped forward. She placed her 6-fingered hand over the 5-fingered impression. Nothing happened. One by one, researchers of different species tried. Voros, with his thick, 3-fingered hand. Quell, with her 4 delicate fingers. A Malorian with tentacles instead of fingers. A Drath with finger pads that secreted adhesive. None could activate the structure. Now you, Tula said to Hyun. Hyun knelt and placed his hand in the impression. It fit perfectly. Immediately, the crystal structure blazed with golden light. The humming musical sound filled the cavern, and the voice spoke. Welcome back, kindred mind, it said through their communication systems. Have you brought others to share our gift? I have, Hyun said. Though some of them may not be able to appreciate it fully. The voice seemed to understand his meaning. We expected this. Not all minds are open to beauty without purpose, but some may learn. The crystal structure changed, revealing different images than before. These showed predecessors teaching younger species, sharing art and music with them. We hoped our gifts would not only find those who already understood, but would help others to see as we once saw, the voice explained. Tula stepped forward. What is the purpose of this installation? She demanded. Purpose? the voice repeated. It exists to be beautiful, to preserve memory, to connect minds across time. Does your existence require more purpose than that? Tula had no answer. For the next week, the expedition team studied the cavern and its wonders. But no matter what, they tried. Nothing would respond to anyone except Hyun. The star maps only appeared when he was present. The crystal structure only glowed for him. And the seed chamber door would only open at his touch. Slowly, the attitudes of the researchers began to change. Some remained frustrated, unable to understand a creation with no practical purpose. But others, especially younger ones like Rill the Seldarian, began to spend time simply experiencing the beauty of the place. On the 10th day, something unexpected happened. When Rill sat quietly before the crystal structure, simply appreciating its colors and sounds without trying to analyze it, a small section of it began to glow for her. It's responding to me, she said in wonder. Because you've learned to see it differently, Hyun explained, not as something to use, but as something to experience. Over the following days, a few more researchers had similar breakthroughs. Never the logical, practical ones like Voros or Tula, but those with more flexible minds. Those who could understand beauty for its own sake. On the final day of the expedition, Director Tula called everyone together. Our findings will require a new approach to predecessor studies, she announced. It appears that their most advanced sites may not be technological in nature, but artistic. She said the word as if it were new to her. And they may require certain emotional capacities to access. She turned to Hyun. Researcher Kang's methods, while unorthodox, have proven valuable. I am establishing a new research protocol, to be named the Kang-Hyun approach, which will combine technological analysis with human intuition. It wasn't a full admission that she had been wrong, but it was enough. Hyun nodded in acceptance. As they prepared to return to Seojin Station, Hyun visited the seed chamber one last time. The thousands of preserved seeds waited for someone to give them new life. The predecessors had entrusted them to humans, to beings who could see beauty in a flower that had no medicinal value, in a tree that produced no edible fruit. We'll bring them back, he promised quietly, touching one of the seed containers. We'll plant them on new worlds. We'll remember you through them. The crystal structure glowed in response as if pleased. When Hyun returned to the society, everything had changed. His tiny office was replaced with a proper laboratory. Young researchers from various species asked to work with him. The human approach was no longer mocked but studied, and across the galaxy teams began searching for other forgotten caves, other hidden wonders that only human hands could open, places of beauty that waited for those who could truly see them. The rainbow crystal sat on Hyun's desk, glowing with the emotions of a long-dead civilization. Sometimes when the station was quiet, he would hold it and feel the ancient joy, wonder, and hope of the predecessors. Feelings that had waited 50,000 years to be felt again. Feelings that had found their home in human hearts.